And welcome back to Focal Point, AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The network is the American Family Radio Talk Network, AFR Talk. Don't forget, the best election coverage in the land available right here on this network, same place you're listening right now, AFR Talk tonight, beginning at 6 p.m. Central Time and going till at least 10 p.m. Might go longer if election results require that. We'll be back early in the morning to give you some more feedback, assessment of what comes in after we go off the air tonight. But the best values voter election coverage you can get going to be here tonight on AFR Talk. We will have Dr. David Jeremiah helping us do assessment tonight, Gary Bauer, Reverend Bill Owens, who is the black pastor who's founder of the Coalition of African American Pastors, Janet Parshall, Star Parker, Phyllis Schlafly, John Fund will be on with us, Tony Perkins, Dr. Robert Jeffress. We have some other guests on standby, Morton Blackwell, and so forth. So we've got a power-packed lineup to help assess what happens tonight. And talking here with Kevin McCullough, 888-589-8840. And Kevin, any sense that you have right now about which way you think this thing is going to go? What do you think is going to happen today?
Sure. I, for reasons that I just don't, like to do it very far in advance, I didn't make a prediction early on, but last night about midnight I sat down and really spelled out what I think is going to happen. And I did a map for myself just to see where I think it's going to come down at. And by the way, I will be joining you guys tonight as well, and looking forward to actually having some numbers to work off of. But I think there's four things that are going to give it to Romney tonight, and here's what they are. Some of them are historically rooted reasons, and some of them I think are very contemporary to what we're dealing with right now. But number one, I think voters choose to make a change in bad economies. And the economy has not improved. It has stayed stagnant. It has mildly improved according to statistical models and so forth. But the average American family is in a worse situation than they have been in some time, and they've been in it longer than they have been in some time. And I think that generally speaking, that when you have a bad economy, I think it's the incumbent's fault. And they normally end up paying the price politically. Number two, I think that, and I think this was a huge policy mistake by the president, but he early on declared war on small businesses. And when you attack small business in America, you're attacking the American economy. And so the more that he made things hard on the local barbershop, shoe store, gas station, the worse it made the economy overall. And not distinguishing between the Microsofts and the Apples versus the mom-and-pop shops, I think is a real mistake, and probably his single biggest downfall in his policy approach in his first term. I think that if he had encouraged small business, he'd probably be looking at a very different overall outlook. Number three, I think this incumbent did something that very few people have been able to do, and that was he united the opposition against him. And when you think about it, the gun rights guys, they don't necessarily want to be in bed with the marriage amendment folks, and they don't always work really well with the pro-lifers, and they don't always get along with the pro-choice supply-siders, and they don't get along with the people who disdain evangelicals, and they don't necessarily support Palin, or they supported McCain, but they didn't like Palin, or they like Palin, but they didn't like McCain. And then you mix into all of that the whole Ron Paul financial philosophy of audit the Fed and so forth. You have a very fractured opposition party to the president, but he united them. The things he did wrong so spoke to each of those groups that they're willing to come together and work together. And then I think the final kind of piece of the puzzle was the nation was more or less afraid of Governor Romney. They didn't know much about him. They didn't, they've heard everything from, scary stuff about his faith to, he's a flip-flopper and all kinds of things. And some of those are legitimate criticisms, but some of them were a little bit exaggerated. But what the debates gave the American people was an opportunity to kind of not be told who he is through filters. And after the conventions and after the debates, I think people said, you know what, he doesn't seem to be a complete lunatic. He's a plausible alternative to what we have. And I think at the end of the day, the vast majority of Americans are voting today based on what they think the economy should be doing in the days to come. And I don't think that 4 more years of what they've had is really what they think is the best approach. And when you look at what Team Romney did, and you and I were at the convention together, I spoke with Tony Perkins. He told me just very directly He said, Kevin, it's been amazing. Tony Perkins, head of Family Research Council, also on the platform committee at the convention. And he said, the McCain folks and the Bush folks gave us a much harder time about the family issues. He said the Romney people really embraced us and really wanted to know from our perspective what they needed, what we need to see by way of commitment from them. In other words, they didn't put up barriers to one wing of the opposition. They said, no, we want to work and help. And so they didn't throw those roadblocks in the way. And I think that as a result, you had for the first time in a long time an opposition to President Obama that was really united. He brought together people at the convention like Governor Huckabee and Rick Santorum, rising stars like Paul Ryan and Chris Christie, and even women and minority faces like Condi Rice and Mia Love. In short, his convention looked a lot like America, with the values of America. And they came out of there, I think, just understanding. I may not know everything about Governor Romney. I may not know everything about him. I don't know if I'll ever know everything about any candidate. But he doesn't seem to be the scary person that the Obama people have been telling me. And I think at the end of the day, that made a big difference for him to be a credible person. Last thing as to why I think it's going to be a big, big win, and I'm predicting a 325 electoral votes for Romney. I'm predicting 213 for Obama. The reason I think that the last piece of that puzzle is I think there's a Republican plus 10 factor that is not being figured into the majority of the polling. Most of the polls, the public polls that have been done, are still being done on a plus 7 to plus 11 Democratic turnout factor in the polling samples that they're using. I don't think that comes anywhere close. If you read Gallup, you understand that Republicans have registered more voters. If you believe some of the stuff that is being reported today, it is possible that not only did Romney draw maybe even with Obama in pre-voting in Ohio, but don't be surprised if you get wind that he may be ahead by 92,000 votes after early voting is added in. If that is true, if they're tied or if Romney is slightly ahead, then Ohio is not going to be a close race. It's going to be a landslide by the Republicans because on today, the expectation is that the Republicans will turn out great enthusiasm for their candidate, whereas on the other side, and last time it required Obama to have a 200,000-plus vote lead in the early voting to sustain the McCain get-out-the-vote effort on Election Day, which he ended up winning the state by a narrow margin, and even though John McCain won the turnout on the day itself.
Well, let's take some phone calls. Let's go to Neil in Richmond, Virginia. So Kevin McCullough predicting a Romney win. That's also my prediction. I'm calling it 51.
Big win.
So I'm thinking 51-48. Are you thinking a bigger differential than that in the
I don't know about
vote?
the popular vote. I'm just saying in an electoral college, I think he's going to win Pennsylvania and Ohio. I think he's going to win Michigan and Minnesota. I think he's going to win Wisconsin. I think he's going to win New Hampshire. And I think the whole ball of wax is Ohio and Pennsylvania. Whichever candidate, if a candidate sweeps both of those states, he's going to win big. If they split the states, I think Romney wins by a smaller margin. And I think that you're going to be able to know everything you need to know by Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Well, let's go to Neil in Richmond, Virginia. Neil, you're on with Brian Fisher and my guest, Kevin McCullough. What's on your mind?
Oh, I just want to thank you and Kevin. I enjoy both your shows. I listen to you all the time and get great information. And thank you for standing boldly.
Well, you're sure welcome.
And I just want to tell you about the polling here in Virginia, where I vote. And I'm just like you and Kevin. I already had my voter ID out and my driver's license out and slapped it
Good
down.
for you, Neil.
You have to, after they take it, you have to state your full name and your address before they even give you anything. So, why can't they do that everywhere?
Yeah, well, there's no reason they can't. I mean, you got to show your photo ID to rent a movie. So
Neil,
why not
saying,
to vote?
But I want to make sure I understand what Neil's saying. Are you actually saying, Neil, that you don't feel harassed by that? Like it's not an imposition upon your right as a human being?
No, I love it. I love it. I look forward to it. I was excited to go. I've been voting since I was 21, 1976, and I've never seen more excitement for an election and more people turn out. So I'm pumped about that.
All right, Neil. Well, listen, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. And if you haven't voted yet or you have friends that haven't voted yet, afaaction.net afaaction.net, the most comprehensive voter guide that you can find anywhere. We've got apps for the iPhone, the iPad, and the Android. Easy to get. Go to the App Store. Or if you got an iPhone, just text the word Apple to 70994 and it'll pop right up. Got an iPad, text the word Apple to the number 70994. You got an Android, text the word Android to the number 70994. It'll pop right up. Let's grab one more call very quickly before the end of the hour. Let's go to Lisa in Fort Hood, Texas. Lisa, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher, Kevin McCullough. What's on your mind?
Well, I just want to say, a few months ago, I wasn't feeling much faith in the American people, but I've kind of changed my tune a little bit. I have today already hauled 4 vans full of people to the polls today.
Good for
and
you.
I'm waiting out here in the parking lot for my daughter and 6 of her friends to come out. They're also going to vote today, and we have our IDs in hand, and we're ready to go.
All right.
I appreciate your show. We found it when we got here to Texas 3 years ago, and we enjoy it.
All right, Lisa. Well, thank you very much for the call. Appreciate that. Another encouraging word. Just both the last 2 callers, Kevin, I'll give you the last word here, last 30 seconds. Both the last 2 callers talking about the level of enthusiasm there is on the conservative side in this election.
Yeah, and that's important. And friends, if you haven't voted yet, take that app into the voting booth with you if you need to. That's why it's available on the smartphones. And I used it in the polling place this morning.
All right, my guest has been Kevin McCullough. You'll hear from Kevin tonight. He'll be on our election night coverage, AFR Talk, right here, same place you're listening right now. Tune us back in at 6 p.m. Central Time. We'll go clear till 10. You get the best election night coverage you can get anywhere. If you got it on your iPhone, your iPad, your Android, there's a button on there you can click. It says coverage. You click that thing and you can tune in instantly on your iPhone or your Android or your iPad to our election night coverage. Thank you, Kevin, for being with us. We'll talk to you again tonight. You're listening to Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back after the news. Don't go anywhere. Focal Point AFR Talk.